James Gunn's Superman loses the legacy. Dune Part 2 has arrived. Plus, Thunderbolts are rumored to be ranked. All that and more on this week's Multiverse News. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name is Matthew Carroll, and on the panel with me today we have Haley Hobbs. What is happening, Haley Hobbs?
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, that's all I got. I didn't think that through, and I didn't know I'd be first.
You ever start a sentence and you just don't know where you're going with it?
Yeah, you just hope you find it along the way. I didn't find it.
I call it podcasting. Like that's
Yeah.
the whole venture over here. Jay Sisson, what is happening?
Hey, I'm doing great. You know, I'm thriving. It's light outside in the evening now. It's light outside in the morning. I mean, I just feel I just feel that depression leaving my body just as we speak.
Congratulations.
I mean, it's happening for you guys too,
How
right?
nice for you, Jay.
I haven't noticed this difference in the sun. I never go outside these days. And Jay Scotty St. Clair, what is happening, Jay Scotty?
I'll answer your question with a question. How do you think it's going?
What do you mean, how do I think it's going?
It's Dune week. It's Dune week. How do you think I'm doing? I'm doing fantastic.
Hey,
Awesome.
how you Dune?
Oh.
Anybody? Okay.
No one's participating in that, Jay. No one's going with you on that ride.
That's a Scotty level. Come on now.
Yeah, I respect it.
He let me on the corner for just a second. Just try it. Just let me try it out just for a sec.
Aw.
One of us.
Jay has the audacity.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, let's start the show off as we have been with a 5-star Apple Podcast review from Brew Crew 2019. It says, "Happy birthday. I'll always give this show a 5-star review every chance I get. Love you guys and every podcast you do." Is it our birthday? Is this our 1 year? Or we're really close?
Somebody tell Matt.
Whose birthday?
It was my
is this from
birthday
last week when it was your birthday? But it is really close to our 1 year. That's
on,
why
get
I
up
was.
to
It is
speed.
close. It is close.
It is very close.
I think we started in March. I think.
Yeah, we
so-
started in March. That's why.
Yeah.
So my assumption was somewhat
Don't
reasonable.
overshadow my birthday with our birthday.
Okay, I may have led you astray because I made the outline this week and Brew Crew had a title with his review, but it was Miss Hobbs. So I wanted to save him the embarrassment and just say, I assumed we would all remember that it was Haley's birthday on the last episode.
well, it wasn't that I don't remember that. It was that I did not my brain did not contextualize that this comment would have been made on the last episode. I was like,
Sure.
"What's today? Is it our birthday?" Okay.
We asked them to so that we would know why they gave the review.
Oh, our first episode was
And
March
by we,
29th.
I mean you.
This is truly the audacity right now.
You're totally right, Haley. I absolutely did do that. I told everyone to say happy birthday. My bad.
Hey, it's been an entire week. We get it.
I wasn't embarrassed about the misinterpretation. I'm very embarrassed that it was me who told them to do that and then did not recall when it happened. Oh, I do too many things. Okay, let's.
It's been a week.
It's been a week, indeed. By the way, our birthday is March 29th.
Okay.
So that's our first episode. First full episode drop was March 29th. So it's coming up. It's coming up.
Sweet.
So anyway, happy
Gonna have to
birthday,
eat some
Haley.
Carolina Reapers.
Yeah, we should.
Absolutely not.
All of us. Give me your addresses. I'll send them out. Okay. First up tonight, Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 garnered an impressive $81.5 million during its domestic opening weekend, bolstered by strong critic and audience reviews. The sequel's strong performance comes during a time that Hollywood has continued to grapple with changing audience dynamics and pandemic-related streaming challenges. Dune's success suggests that there's still an appetite for big-budget, visually stunning blockbusters. Or was it just the popcorn bucket?
Hey, cinema's back, baby. I mean, we've arrived. You know, this is cinema, and I unfortunately do not live near an AMC theater, so I was not able to obtain the popcorn bucket. I would have had I had the opportunity. I would have paid up to probably about $60 for it just for the bit. But unfortunately, oh my gosh, Scotty has one.
Scotty has the bucket. Scotty has the bucket.
Scotty has the bucket since Thursday night.
I can't believe that you didn't say anything.
We're going to get censored on Twitch.
When you were in the message group saying you commit to the bit, I was just like, all right, I just got to hold it until we get on stream and make the big reveal.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thrown off right now.
I know. I'm sort of like starstruck by the bucket, right? Anybody else feeling that?
It's like seeing like a celebrity in person.
It's like that episode of The Office where Michael Scott has his costume, but it's just his paper mache head.
Yes.
I have a few questions. The first one is, did you actually eat popcorn out of it, or did you just buy the bucket?
I just bought the bucket. I have been on record that I do not like popcorn, and to be honest, the idea of eating popcorn out of this thing and sullying this work of art just is completely unappealing for multiple reasons.
My second question is, like, give me a percentage breakdown of the audience that had one, like estimation.
Oh, yeah, they were flying off the shelves like hotcakes. People were there for the popcorn bucket. Yes, indeed. And the majority of people were eating their popcorn out of it. And on my way out of the theater, I heard some complaints about, like, how much popcorn they were actually able to get out of this thing versus how much they were throwing away at the end of the 2-hour and 45-minute experience.
Those buttery tendrils.
Oh man, that was maybe my favorite moment of this show's entire history. So I saw Dune this weekend, and I think I agree with many people who saw it in that it was a stunning experience. Like, just cinematically and just the scale of it was incredible. I mean, you guys are going to cover it a little bit more in depth on Bingers, so that's coming if you want to hear more about like the plot and stuff like that. We're here to talk more about like the business side of it and everything. But some of the breakdowns of the numbers I thought were really interesting, and it shows us like how big this movie is. 70% of all theater goers this weekend were seeing Dune, which is really crazy. Like, that number's really, really high. I mean, even like blockbuster, clear the way for this movie type experiences don't hit like 70%, or if they do, it's like a super successful movie. So that really stood out to me. Also, the number of people who saw this in IMAX was extraordinarily high. It was like, especially on that Thursday, it was almost half of all showings were IMAX showings, which is showing us that like people are really starting to buy into that IMAX experience like in a big way. Like, it's always been there, but it seems like that is really becoming the way that a lot of people will take in their movies, is with an IMAX theater. I actually don't live in the best location for IMAX. The closest IMAX theater to me is like a couple hours away, but like I know that this was where the party was. While this movie was being shown, especially on like Thursday and Friday night, there were stories being published about how there was a sold out 3:15 in the morning showing of this movie. People were, going crazy watching it. Like, it was like going to a concert, is how a lot of people described it. So I think, like, looking at this, I mean, I expect that it'll do well. I expect that it'll continue to rake in the money as we go on. It's got that high cinema score. There's not a whole lot standing in its path between now and when it's going to ultimately leave theaters. And I think it just highlights for me like the power of the cast. I mean, the cast, I kept going over this cast in my mind after I left, Austin Butler and Florence Pugh. And like, then you start going through like Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet, and like you start naming them and you're like, this is like all the young firepower in Hollywood. Like there's a lot of those like what we would call like, I don't know if you call them up-and-comers at this point. I mean, they're A-list actors, but they've really exploded onto the scene recently, and you get them all in one movie, and man, it brings people out. Like, it's this cast is great, and I think looking forward, we're only going to see more of a commitment, I think, to this universe. I think Warner Brothers is probably trying to do the paperwork right now to lock down to Denis Villeneuve to like first look contract agreements with their studio. I mean, why wouldn't you at this point? And I mean, we're entering a time where people are really coming out to see this movie like we said they would, and people are really buying in. It's a fun time to be a fan of that franchise.
Well, we know that Warner Brothers is definitely going to buy in because they are producing a TV show focused on the Bene Gesserit, which is going to be interesting. And I think it's fairly confirmed even by Denis himself that part 3 is coming. So I think he did, right, Scotty?
He's actively working on Dune Messiah. As far as it being officially greenlit, I don't know if that's
okay.
been
I think
said.
the script is written by him
Right,
or by whoever at least. So, I mean, like Jay said, it's going to happen right at this point with these numbers. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on those two things because my thoughts can be heard on source pages right now and will be heard on Bingers later. So, definitely a fun experience.
Yeah, so this breakdown quotes, I think we said 81.5 million for the opening weekend, but I think the final tally was actually an additional 80 million. I think it came in at 82.5 million. And that's obviously a great opening weekend and really feels like the shot of adrenaline in the arm that the 2024 box office needed. And Jay, you talk about how these like premium formats were really where this movie made money. That's exactly what I experienced. Like I went and saw the movie twice. I saw it Thursday night and then I watched it again Saturday. And you know, as far as my take on it, I will save my thoughts for Bingers Assemble as well. But I will say that I think the comparisons to the Two Towers and the Lord of the Rings trilogy are wildly appropriate. Like this is a sequel that just really builds on a solid first movie that did a lot of like world building and setup, and then just pays off with that in spades. Just in terms of like the health of the box office and like understanding that these premium formats really are the appeal, that excites me. Like this is hardcore sci-fi. Like this is not a film that like slows down to explain things. This is sci-fi for adults. And it was interesting, you know, we talk about like the breakdown of the audience trends and dynamics here. And one thing that I found interesting is I saw some statistics that it was less than 18% of the total pie were, you know, audience members that were under 18 years old. And actually it was audience members that were like 40, I want to say like 40 years and older, took the biggest slice of the pie there. So, you know, it's interesting. We often think that it's the young up and comers and the new generation that are going to decide the trends. But, you know, I think there's a time and place for, you know, content for all audiences and a mature audience. Not saying that, you know, other audiences aren't mature.
That's interesting because I did think like the 81 million domestic. I was like, I don't know if it's because of some of the huge box offices we had last year, but I thought it seemed a little low. Like I thought it would domestically bring in 100 million, but if that portion of the population wasn't really going to see it, that kind of explains why it didn't bust 100 million on its opening weekend. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a really interesting concept to think about. Actually, the fact that people over 40 were a large portion of the people going to see this. Maybe it's because of the content, maybe it's because of the type of content, the fact that it's a movie that a property a lot of younger folks may not recognize, and maybe they will after this one is such a popular movie. Maybe part 3 will have that shift and it'll start being visible to a younger audience. But I also think it's just interesting to think about, and probably something we'll talk about on Multiverse News in the future as well. Like, the idea that like people younger than us that are on this show, some of them just like they don't get their media the same way we do and have, and their fan bases, the things they're fans of aren't always the same. Like there's so much more with social media, so much more with streaming that like the kinds of fandoms people have are so much more split and specific and all this stuff. It's just like really interesting to see like what movies will those things eventually be what replaces the movies, or will movies always be made for sort of our generation and keep moving forward? Obviously, like things like Five Nights at Freddy's, like that was one that we had this year that was like for that audience of people who like that thing that like most of us didn't even recognize hardly. Yeah. It's just kind of interesting to think about.
No, it is. And I think you bring up some interesting conversation pieces there. But I for one, think that there will always be, you know, those outliers and those that preserve the art. Like we see like the up and comers now, like Denis Villeneuve himself, like his early films like Incendies or like Arrival or Prisoners, like they're not necessarily as accessible as like the stuff he's doing nowadays, but he definitely cut his teeth learning from, you know, his heroes and the best of the best. So I think that form of auteurism and just dedication to the classic filmmaking will persist no matter how, you know, the times and trends change.
Oh, for sure. I was more talking about like the specific properties they're making movies about and what kind of audience that attracts and whether the the properties that are for a younger audience make it to the movie theaters, since movie theaters are a thing they're as trained to do. You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's fair.
But I definitely agree that like the younger folks will continue to make great art and like continue the film art form.
Well, to your point, Matt, like people who are probably mostly in the elder millennial age are like the ones reviewing these movies, and a lot of them are comparing it to the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy, like I was 11 or 12 when the first one came out, right? So we were children, but we're not seeing children go see these movies because they're a little more elevated in terms of the concepts. I'm not going to say the content, but the concepts are a little more elevated than Lord of the Rings. So Scotty's saying, yeah, kids aren't going to see this, but we were kids going to see Lord of the Rings, and those comparisons to it don't actually, not the Two Towers one, but like overall the comparisons don't actually ring that true to me because of that very thing. Like if kids aren't going to see these movies, then will they persist? Like you're saying, Matt, like, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting shift from what we consider our epics of our childhoods to this epic in our adulthood, but kids aren't necessarily watching it. Yeah.
Well, and that brings up a whole other conversation which I won't delve deep into. Sorry. I'm picking these very specific things about this story and jumping into it. But I've been complaining for a long time. There are less movies being made and TV shows being made that are family, like the whole family can enjoy, like they're made on an adult level, but kids have something to go there for, you know. And I think obviously the big ones Disney makes, like Marvel and Star Wars, are still that, but I think less and less of that is happening in the world, and it's becoming more bifurcated. And it's interesting to see what that leads to down the line.
Haley, what you brought up with the Lord of the Rings comparisons, I think you're absolutely right. Like Lord of the Rings is a story of like classic good versus evil, where Dune is exploring much more complex and nuanced, you know, ideas about a hero and the hero's journey and an anti-hero. So I just wanted to say, like, my comparisons for the most part are in terms of like the epic world building and scale and sense of like, you know, fantasy and imagination on display.
Yeah. And those are accurate.
Sure.
For sure.
Awesome. I unfortunately had a bad weekend and could not go see it this weekend. So I am excited to see it this week At some point, I will see it this week. Too many Oscars movies to watch before Wednesday, and then I will go see. We're finishing up our Oscars coverage on Wednesday, and so I have a lot of Oscars movies to watch. All right, up next, James Gunn broke the internet, as always, by revealing his upcoming DCU kickoff film will no longer be titled Superman Legacy, but simply Superman. The news came via Gunn's social media post celebrating the first day of filming that also showcased our first image of the Superman logo. Later in the week, we learned that The Wire and Suits actor Wendell Pierce has been cast in the film as Daily Planet editor-in-chief Perry White. A big week for The Last Son of Krypton. Who's excited?
I'm excited. You know, it's a tempered excitement, but I'm excited. I'll be honest, the Superman Legacy title had grown on me. I think as long as this show has been around, we've been talking about Superman Legacy, but I do think the title change makes sense. In addition to this post, James had some words about how, you know, when he first revealed the title, the script was at a certain point, and that title, Superman Legacy, made sense for that version of the film. But now that filming is underway and you know, production is in active development, the script is in a different state, and he feels the title of Superman in all caps is more appropriate. And you know, it's a bold move, and I think it's making a statement. It's really trying to distinguish itself and set itself apart as like, hey, this is not going to have any pre-existing baggage. You don't have to worry about any of the other DC films or comic book films or TV shows or whatever. This is, you know, DC's tried and true original hero, Superman. You can get on board with this universe starting right here. So I think it's a good move in that sense. As far as the image goes, I've seen some criticisms that it does look a lot like the Man of Steel version of the logo that we saw. And I see those comparisons. It does make sense. I think I've seen some pushback from James himself saying like it's a different texture. And I see the difference as well, but I do see the similarities. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but overall, I think it's a pretty good move. And in terms of the addition of Perry White cast as Wendell Pierce here, I'm not super familiar with the actor, but I do like this trend. We've seen the character of Perry White since he appeared in Man of Steel, portrayed by Lawrence Fishburne. On My Adventures with Superman, he was similarly portrayed by a black animated character in that sense. But it's nice to see this trend where like a character like Perry White, he was historically white, no pun on the last name there, but we've been able to evolve that character, and his race doesn't really play that big a factor. So if we can have more diversity and inclusion in these big tentpole properties, I'm on board for it.
I definitely like the title change because, to your point, Scotty, Superman Legacy indicates that you need to know some kind of information ahead of time. Right. And if this is a true restart, then that's what it should be. I don't know that we've had just a Superman in a long time, too. So there's plenty of space between what was and what will be. That it's fine. I don't love the logo shot because I agree it looks just like the Man of Steel. And I feel like, save us a little something, James. You don't have to put it all on the line.
Are you familiar with James Gunn?
Very intimately.
If we're going to comb through the image, the logo did have some snow on it too, which did sort of give me like, hey, this is like a Fortress of Solitude kind of vibe or something like that to it, which I think is definitely intentional. The Wendell Pierce casting, I think, is pretty dead on. I actually just finished watching Jack Ryan on Amazon. He is in that, and he plays
really good in that.
Yeah, and he's great in it, and he gives me that same feel that you would want from like an angry editor of a newspaper that's kind of like has a, like it fits. And if you've seen that show, and I didn't really watch Suits, but at least in that particular role, like, I'm all down with that.
He's very exasperated with his rogue agent of Jack Ryan. It's very much like, oh, Lois, what are you doing? Get me doing this thing. Like, it totally fits.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't know why I'm shocked that you didn't watch Suits, Jay. I felt like for some reason you were part of that like summer revival of Suits watchers. No?
I'll catch it on the next go around. Okay. It's plenty of time.
the reboot, Suits LA.
Yeah.
Reported on here on Multiverse News.
I wait till they get it right and watch like the 5th reboot or whatever. I think it's interesting. You mentioned it, Haley. They haven't had just a Superman in a while, and I think they've never. The first one back in the 70s was Superman the movie, I think, and this is the first one just called Superman. And it's interesting because I have been saying about DC for years how they screwed up majorly by not putting out a second Man of Steel. Like not giving Henry Cavill another movie. Like it's insane. They went like 12 years or something and never did a sequel to Man of Steel. I don't know how long it actually was. I'm just saying stuff. But like I think it was that long though. But the benefit of that is though, unlike when you reboot Spider-Man and you're like, oh, we just had a Spider-Man 2 years ago. We haven't had a Superman movie where he's the main character in a really long time. So it being a Superman movie kind of feels fresh in a weird way, and doesn't need that legacy title, doesn't need any subtitle. It's just Superman. It's just a real restart and an actual Superman movie, which I think we've all been asking for since with Henry Cavill, but I guess that never happened. So maybe we can feel a little fresher and more excited for this one.
I also think it's a little bit of pushback against some of like the criticism, like, hey, this cast is like really expanding. We've got all these other superheroes. Is Superman really going to be the focus of this movie? And we have heard that, Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane is going to be, an active protagonist and a large part of the proceedings here. But with that title, again, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, this is a Superman movie.
Yeah. That's a good point. I like that. All right, up next, this falls strictly into the unsubstantiated rumor column, but Daniel Richtman, AKA DanielRPK, an industry insider with a reputation for his accuracy, has suggested that the members of the Thunderbolts are ranked by the order of importance to the movie, with Yelena and Val at the top of the list, and Bucky Barnes and Red Guardian rounding out the bottom spots. Do we think there's any validity to this claim? If so, how does it impact our expectations for this Phase 5 flick?
So the post says the reported hierarchy of importance for the roster, and that's all it says. And so my kind of immediate take was this to me means this might be how much we see of these characters in this movie. So we can expect to see a lot of Yelena and Val, and we can expect not to see a ton of Red Guardian and Bucky. And I think that's the best way to look at it, because otherwise it could take you to a dark place, especially if those are like characters that you really love. Like just, to take the assumption that Bucky being close to the bottom means like maybe he's going to be killed off or something is sort of disheartening to the franchise at this point when he's such a fan favorite character. So that's my my Pollyanna optimistic take.
I think that's a very fair take, and I don't think that importance does not mean they're dying. I think a lack of importance. I think often if a character dies, it means they're going to have a pretty strong arc in the movie. So I think lack of importance probably means, especially for characters that are coming from another movie and we're hoping will stick around. I think especially Bucky. I think losing him in this would be hard. But maybe that's what the movie needs. I don't know. But yeah, I could see Red Guardian going though. I like him a lot, but I could see it.
Poor Alexi.
Yeah, I could see it.
This movie has gone through a lot though too. I mean, it started off with like one of the writers of Beef was supposed to write it, and then all of a sudden we got these reports about, well, it's gone through this kind of like script retooling where we're bringing in another writer to clean it up, and there hasn't really been an update on like what the status is of this script. Like, we don't really know how much of it has been changed, but clearly it's gone through the ringer a few times and has not really been well received by Feige and company, and then has been kicked around to try to edit. And I think that matters in the whole conversation here too. I mean, when that movie was announced, it was a different time, and then all of a sudden we had the delays from the strike and from the writer's strike and the actor strike and all this compiling, and it shifted everyone's schedule around. You've got in-demand talent in this. Sebastian Stan's been getting work like crazy. David Harbour, he's getting ready to film Stranger Things season 5 right now. Florence Pugh obviously is Florence Pugh. And so you look at that and you're like, man, like that's a cast that you're gonna have to write the script around, like the demands of the cast, right? In a way, which kind of like complicates it a little bit. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. Like that does matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I'll kind of provide the caveat here that of all the rumors we've ever talked about on this one kind of really feels like the most unsubstantiated. While Daniel RPK does have a pretty proven track record, there's not really much to go on here outside of his word. And, in terms of like Val and Yelena being at the top of the list, I think, no matter how we want to dice this up, that makes sense. That is in line with what we've heard about this movie. Obviously, Florence Pugh is a star right now, A-list talent. Yelena's character has been received very well across Black Widow, as well as her appearance in Hawkeye. And we know, Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Val, she is kind of the Nick Fury for this team. She is the one providing all of the setup and the recruiting there. As far as everything else shakes out, that I think is open for interpretation. Now, as far as Red Guardian goes, Matt, to your point, I could see him going out, and that his relationship with Yelena really building towards her character and her loss, having to reckon with that. But outside of that, the fact that we're looking at John Walker, potentially Bucky, and Red Guardian all at the bottom of this list, and those are all like Captain America ancillaries. It's like I could kind of see that, but at the same time, it's like, what are we saying about the character of Captain America? Do we not have the same level of respect for that character, or are they, making these ancillary versions of the character more sacrificial in an attempt to bolster up the Sam Wilson version of the character? I could see that playing out. Ghost and Taskmaster kind of being in the middle of the rut here is just, that's the one that makes me scratch my head the most, because those are two characters that I would love to get more development for, but there's not a lot to go off of right now. I don't think they're fan favorites. I don't think the average MCU fan or casual moviegoer is going to, they're not names or characters that are going to put butts in seats, but hopefully there is an opportunity for this MCU to branch out and build up some of these characters that we've only touched on.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with lots more to talk about, lots of lightning round topics to touch on today, and our Spotify poll. But first, let me tell you, if you want to be a premium member of this here thing called Multiverse News, You can go over to patreon.com/multiverse newscast and you can join just $4 a month and you get the episodes. The episodes?
Udacity and episodes today.
Yep.
They're coined on Multiverse News. Yeah.
That's right. Some TM CR. You get the episodes. They're ad free. You can check them out over there, and that'd be great. Multiverse Newscast on Patreon. Patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast. And we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Multiverse News. We're here to talk about some news. As always, Spotify poll this week. We had, do you think The Joker 2 will be worth its $200 million budget? I honestly was shocked this was so close. We had 45.8% say yes and 54.2% say no. What do you guys think about those results?
I want you to expound. You said you were shocked.
I am. I think I was expecting more no's, and not that like it's going to be bad, but it's such a huge budget, especially after the first one cost so little. It just seems like an explosion in the budget without necessarily a purpose. And so it seems like they got lightning in a bottle with that $1 billion, take from the first one. It feels like this one, it will be tough, especially with all the changes in cinema, to hit anywhere close to $1 billion again. So a $200 million budget, add to that promotion, like it just seems to me like from a business perspective and from an artistic perspective, does not seem worth the $200 million they're throwing at it. But I hope to be wrong.
Well, I think it was it was more no than yes for quite a while, and then the gap just kind of slowly closed over the week. So
okay.
Yeah. I thought about it a little bit afterwards, too, after the conversation we had last week. And we talked about, this is already a $200 million budget, and they're going to have to throw a marketing budget on top of that. And I actually thought, I wonder how much marketing they're actually going to have to do with, Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga and kind of like their built-in audiences there and how well that first movie did. Like, obviously, they're going to have to do some kind of marketing, but I think it may be more minimal than we're thinking.
It's a good point.
Yeah, Lady Gaga, though, because I thought that too, and then I started thinking about movies she's done, and that, what was that movie called? Like House of Gucci or whatever, I think is what it was called. That movie, really did not get off the ground. So
I wouldn't put that entirely on her shoulders.
no.
Fair.
Also, I didn't know she was in that. I remember when that movie came out, I had no idea Lady Gaga was in it. So maybe that one was, I think A Star Is Born did well. And she was, a key player in that. I don't know how
Star Is Born
well.
was a remake too, though, so it draws in that remake crowd.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
And the people who like poopsie poopsies.
Yeah. Plus, there was that great Star Is Born bucket that. Everybody went in for.
This is gonna be the new thing.
It will be a thing. Yeah, you have to accept. You have
Is
to
it
accept
a really
that
shallow
it's a thing.
bucket?
That was a good one, Scotty.
I like it.
Hey, he's still got it.
Buy this with almost no popcorn in it. Get it? It's meta.
Nothing my husband liked to make fun of more than them going la 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 lo. Sha la la lo. So
La la lo. All right. Well, we're gonna dive into the lightning round. You guys know how this works. I'm going to read a story, and then we are going to claim that story by yelling out our name if we want it. And whoever yells out first gets to claim the story and be the only one to respond. But once per round, we get a rebuttal. Once per lightning round, we get a rebuttal. And here we go. EA has canceled Respawn Entertainment's upcoming first-person Star Wars game, which was recently reported to feature a Mandalorian bounty hunter.
Scotty? Yeah, this news comes at a time when the gaming industry is seeing a lot of cutbacks, like industry-wide. Respawn just had Jedi Survivor, which was reportedly pretty successful. Elsewhere, we're seeing Insomniac, which did, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation. We just talked about it a few months ago, how that was one of the fastest-selling PlayStation titles of all time. And it doesn't matter. That success is not making a difference. They're still seeing cutbacks. So, this is an industry that I'm pretty invested in, so I hope that they can adapt and overcome and find a way to continue to bring, high-level IP to us in our homes in an interactive way. But they're going to have to make some kind of adjustments and learn, because it's another industry that we're seeing a lot of pushback in terms of crunch, and are animators and the technical people, are they being compensated for their time like they should be?
Nick Offerman and Betty Gilpin have joined Michael Shannon and Matthew McFadden in Netflix's Death by Lightning, a historical drama series about the assassination of U.S. President James Garfield.
Jay, we talked about this series a couple weeks ago whenever it was first announced, and we were kind of intrigued by it because of the talent attached to it. And you're going to put Nick Offerman in there? Like, I think that's the good call. I mean, you're telling me you're making a period piece about U.S. presidents? Like, pick an actor? I mean, the first one I'm going to think of is Nick Offerman, so makes total sense.
Totally. Richard Lewis, stand-up comedian who also starred alongside Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm, has passed away at 76. Matt, this was really sad to hear, and I heard it the day that I went to watch a recent episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, it being the final season, and it was sort of surreal in the episode. Him and Larry are arguing over who's going to die first as their characters, but they are their characters and they are playing them. It was very surreal. But yeah, this was sad to hear. He's really great on that show. He's been a comedian that I've seen my entire life, but I've known him more from that show than anything, as Larry's, one of Larry's best friends on the show, and always really funny when he's on there. And so this was really sad to hear. All condolences to his family and friends. Director Akiva Schaffer's untitled installment in the Naked Gun comedy franchise featuring Liam Neeson and produced by Seth MacFarlane is set to hit theaters on July 28th, 2025. Matt, I hate to grab two in a row being the guy reading the stories, but I tried to pause first. I just think this sounds exciting. I don't know how many of you followed the Naked Gun series, but I loved them as a kid. I loved Liam Neeson movies in general as a kid, and it sounds really fun. One of the things that's cool about Liam Neeson is he was not a comedic actor prior to, I think, Airplane. He was just an actor, and he was like, and so when they brought him to do Airplane, I think it was Airplane was his first big comedic one. And, when they brought him into the comedy world, he just continued to play everything straight. And that's what makes him so good. And so this being Liam Neeson, I'm assuming playing that character, seems awesome. Just seems great, because I imagine he will bring that same sort of energy of like a serious actor taking on that like comedic role. I think this sounds really, really fun.
Scotty with a rebuttal. I'm glad you were able to speak with some expertise to Naked Gun, because as I spoke before we went on air, I've never seen Naked Gun, but I hope to correct that before this new adaptation. But I wanted to hone in on Akiva Schaffer, and that bodes really well for me in terms of like spoofs. I feel like spoofs are one of those genres that we haven't really had very many good spoofs in a while. Like there were those terrible movies in like the mid 2000s, like the Disaster movie, Date movie, and all that. But like thinking about Airplane, thinking about what I know about the Naked Gun, like that was a golden era of spoof movies. And I think if you look at Akiva Schaffer and like what he did with Hot Rod and Pop Star Never Stopping, like those are great spoofs that are really self-aware and really meta. So if he can bring those sensibilities to like a tried and true property like Naked Gun, I think it sounds cool.
It's a really, really great point. I focused on the Liam Neeson role, but I love Akiva. And all the Lonely Island guys and everything they're doing are in. So this is exciting. That's really exciting. Mm-hmm. Tron Ares star Jared Leto shared a first-look image at the upcoming sci-fi sequel via Instagram. The film is eyeing a 2025 release.
Haley.
Scotty? Oh, go ahead, Haley.
Oh, okay. So
Haley,
I think this is funny because, like, it's a cool photo, but it's the person's in a full Tron suit, and so like there's like no guarantee that that's actually Jared Leto. I just like that.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Look at me in this new movie, and it's just like CGI.
It's like the stunt person.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm surprised that we're still building film franchises around Jared Leto. It kind of felt like maybe we had moved on from him as a society, but I guess we
That's kind of
not.
why I'm like, is this even him?
It's Tron time.
Quiet, J. Scotty. They'll re-release it before it's even out. Emily Blunt is in talks to join Ben Safdie's solo directorial debut with Smashing Machine, A24 feature film starring Dwayne Johnson as MMA and UFC champion Mark Kerr.
Scotty. I've gone on record as being like the A24 guy, but as their filmography and expanse has grown, I haven't been able to catch everything. So I will say on the surface, I don't think this would be something that appeals to me as much. But I look at everybody involved, and Benny Safdie, this kind of being his first project that he's doing independent of his brother, and Emily Blunt having worked with Dwayne The Rock Johnson on Jungle Cruise. Obviously, they must have had a good time together and some chemistry. But then with Emily Blunt and Benny Safdie, the only thing I know that they've worked together on was Oppenheimer, and like their scene together and their characters, it was a really cold exchange. But I just find it interesting that even though on camera it was a cold exchange, that apparently like creative sparks flew in some capacity, and they wanted to collaborate and bring that partnership into the future.
HBO's Last of Us has added 4 actors to its cast: Danny Ramirez, Ariela Barrera, Tati Gabrielle, and Spencer Lord. Their casting comes as the show is gearing up to begin production in the spring.
Jay, there's not a whole lot to really say here because you can't really get too deep into talking about this casting without really getting into plot points from the story, but these are 4 characters which are not like super main characters. They're not going to get a ton of screen time, but they're still very important to the story. The only one I recognize immediately is Tati Gabrielle. She was a star of Netflix's You. She was kind of like opposite Penn Badgley for a season and a half or something like that in that show. And so she's kind of on the rise from that. Like that's the main thing I recognize her from. But yeah, I mean this they're going to start filming this thing here pretty soon. Like Pedro's already talking about how they're getting together. They're doing table reads. Like this thing's going to start getting moving pretty soon.
Scotty with a rebuttal. I didn't think I was going to respond to this one, but I just wanted to say I think most people will probably recognize Danny Ramirez's name the most. He showed up in Top Gun Maverick. He was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier as the new Falcon.
Yeah, good call.
Neat. Lionsgate released the trailer for the upcoming horror film The Strangers Chapter 1, which is set to release on May 17th.
Jay, they're in an Airbnb, so I guess that's our modern update for Strangers. I watched it and I was just kind of like, okay, I mean, it makes sense. Like they're getting stalked by people for no reason. Like that's the whole shtick. But I'm not a horror guy, so like feel free to, Scotty, if you want to jump in here. Like I don't know much about. I don't really watch a lot of horror, but to me, it's like, okay, you made a movie about, all right, hey, we're staying somewhere and there's people and they're stalking us for no reason and then they kill us for no reason and that's supposed to be the whole shtick and people bought into that. But that seems to kind of exactly be what this trailer is. Like if you showed me this trailer and you were like, this is actually the trailer for the first Strangers, I'd be like, okay, I guess Liv Tyler shows up later or whatever. Like I would just buy that. I wouldn't. So to me, like that's sort of a red flag because it's like, did we do anything to try to like make this new? Like did we try to update it or are we just kind of rehashing the same idea? So, not to judge it too harshly because this is the first trailer, but that was kind of the immediate takeaway.
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain, and the first thing that's like coming to mind, like with the Strangers Chapter 1, this was like part of like a trilogy that was announced that, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be released in a very close like proximity to each other.
The original plan was that all 3 movies would release this year, I believe. I don't know if that's still the plan, but that was kind of the original announcement.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Man, it's really interesting. I guess rebuttal. It's really interesting that they've got The Strangers doing that. They've got that Kevin Costner 4-part film that's planning something similar, and then the Beatles, biopic that is planning to do like 4 movies and release fairly close together. Like I think that's a new strategy. And have we seen this? I mean, we've seen it with like The Matrix. Released 6 months apart back in the day. Lord of the Rings, I think, was a year apart. We've seen it before, but it's weird that this is happening a lot. And I wonder if it's that whole trying to do a thing that like grabs the attention and then keeps it for multiple like cycles or whatever, and not just because I guess it's a way to market your movie and then let your movie market the next movie. And we often talk about it in if you're going to a city you've never played before, or if you're going to a city you're playing out of town as a band, one of the things you always want to do is have your next show booked, because while you're there, you can tell them the next time you're coming. So people, like, if they love your band, they'll put it on their calendar right then, instead of like trying to like email them or call them or whatever. Like, that just doesn't always work. So if you're just like, hey, you're having fun tonight, right? Put this on your calendar. Like, so it kind of has that vibe to me. So that's kind of interesting. Paramount has announced the action film Novocaine, starring Jack Quaid and Amber Midthunder, will be released on March 14th, 2025.
Scotty, I don't know if we know if this thing's going to be released theatrically or if it's just going to be straight to streaming or what have you. But those are two names right there, Jack Quaid and Amber Midthunder, that are definitely up and comers. Amber Midthunder is a name that I've been following for a while. She first.
It shows, J. Scotty.
Right. It's a tough name. It's the Amber and then the Mid Thunder. It's the Amber Thunder.
Mid Thunder is hard to say.
Yeah. But I first saw her on FX's Legion, and she was a great character on that. And then obviously Prey came out on Hulu a couple of years ago, and I really feel like it made her a household name and a person to keep an eye on. So it seems like a winning pair, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Love it. Kumail Nanjiani has joined the cast of Only Murders in the Building Season 4 in a recurring role.
Haley, they just started filming for this show, actually, so it's interesting that he's just now been cast, or at least the news has just been broken. Only Murders, I love it, but it's becoming one of those shows that's like really inserting big-name actors in ways that don't always pay off or serve the story, and like it's kind of losing some of that Season 1 charm. But it's still a good show.
While promoting Dune Part 2, Rebecca Ferguson ignited an internet whodunit when she accused a former co-star of screaming at her to the point of reducing her to tears, prompting some of her colleagues to mark themselves safe on social media. Not it.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, I love Rebecca Ferguson. I just love her so much. Like, she does not care. She's going to tell you what she thinks and tell you exactly what's on her mind. So for her to have that confidence now to be able to kind of go back and look at the early days in her career, and to her credit, she did not identify this person in any way, shape, or form. Not even a gender was revealed. So it was really funny that like all of her previous co-stars, like including Emily Blunt, The Rock, Tom Cruise, all marked themselves safe as if they would from like a storm or like a world disaster or something like that. It seems like two names did kind of emerge as like the most likely suspects, Hugh Grant and Michael Fassbender, which are two performers that I love. So I really hope it's not either one of them, but it does seem like it's more than likely Michael Fassbender. They were together in The Snowman, and that just sounds like it was a troubled production all around. So.
Tiny butt. I love Rebecca Ferguson. I think she's unhinged, and I think she's just making it up.
I would
really want that to be the truth, because
it's like
I think it's hysterical.
The lie got so big, and she just has to commit to it now.
I think she would.
Watching the internet try to figure this out was fantastic last week. Like it
was great publicity for Dune.
Oh yeah, like people went to the drawing board. Like they were like, "How do we figure this out?" They were like listing out her IMDb page, like mapping out actors, crossing them out. I mean, it was wonderful. It's great internet / Hollywood drama.
Oh man, sometimes people are just bored and need something to figure out. This is how QAnon started.
She's a genius.
Oh, potential Dune spoilers in this next story, but as someone who hasn't seen it, it meant nothing to me, so don't worry too much. Several scenes were cut from Dune Part 2, including one featuring actor Tim Blake Nelson in a mystery role, and scenes featuring Thufir Hawat reprising his role from the first film. Denis Villeneuve has stated that the deleted scenes will never be released to the public.
Jay, deleted scenes and the conversation around deleted scenes is very interesting. Nolan is another one that refuses to release any deleted scenes, even if they end up kind of creeping out what they were about. And I'm kind of two minds on it. I tend to side a little more with Denis Villeneuve and Nolan that the idea of a deleted scene sort of kind of compromises the story of your movie in some way. I will say that, and a lot of times these scenes are unfinished and they don't look good, and they just end up creating like conversations that don't really matter at the end of the day because they didn't make it into the film for any reason. Now, I will say that Tim Blake Nelson, he did say that he was heartbroken that he did not make it into the film, which makes me sad because I do love Tim Blake Nelson. But overall, I think there's an interesting conversation there about like deleted scenes and what kind of place do they have, because there are directors out there, and I think you'll see more directors kind of creep towards this. There are directors out there that are just like, absolutely not. Like, you're never seeing a deleted scene from a movie that makes it to the floor. If it's not in the movie, it didn't happen. So I think it's kind of interesting.
Austin Stowell has been cast as the younger version of Leroy Jethro Gibbs in NCIS Origins, which is a prequel series to NCIS set in 1991. Nobody? Yep.
I don't even know what to say, except this stuff just makes me laugh.
I mean, let's take a show that's been on for, what, like 20 years? Let's prequel it up, baby.
How far back do you have to set the prequel so that it doesn't start like encroaching on the actual show? Yeah. Oh,
hey,
man.
we definitely need to go back and explore the origins of this character that's been on your screen for decades.
If it's the 80s, does it become like kind of Miami Vice-ish? Like, I don't know.
We just didn't have enough time to fully explore his character. Yeah, you know? Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Moon Knight, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier will all be released individually on 4K UHD and Blu-ray in collectible packaging. The individual sets will include concept art, deleted scenes, and behind-the-scenes extras.
Haley, we got a tease of this last year from Disney. They did Loki and WandaVision, and clearly that must have gone well. Plus, we know they have that new partnership with Sony to release the physical media. So I think both of those things spawned this, and I think it's kind of cool for the collectors of the world, if this is your thing, and maybe it'll keep people psyched for all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Tiny butt too. Like, I think a lot of people are just kind of getting turned off to the idea of not having access to physical media, strangely enough. Like, for a while, it was just kind of like, why would I ever buy that? Everything's on digital. But then we started seeing these stories like, oh, the PlayStation Store is taking away all of the purchases that you've ever made. And now that, like, oh, actually, you're actually renting these from us. These are not things that you actually own. And I think a lot of people were like, okay, I guess the only way that I can have things and know that I have them is if I buy them. And I think a lot of people are started their collection because of that fear. And it's not just even series and movies, it's like video games too. It's the same thing. Like, people buy video games digitally, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, Nintendo's shutting down the store for that. So if you never bought a physical copy of it, which was the same price, you actually don't own it anymore, you know? And so I think there's just a bigger conversation there about, like, I think the tides are shifting a little bit, like, not in huge bulk. Like, it's not like everybody's going out and buying physical media, but I think there's clearly a large percentage of people that do.
Other miniature butt.
Tinier butt.
This is a Bob Iger cash grab, and I'm already mad at him today because a new YA novel released for the High Republic for Star Wars, and the audiobook on Apple was $22. And I was like,
it's Iger season, baby.
You chill out, Bob Iger. I know you're trying to make some money, but this is ridiculous.
Tiniest butt. The
popcorn butt.
The Blu-ray sets, if you want to get crazy about it, are labeled the title. So, like, the Obi-Wan one is titled Obi-Wan: The Complete Series. But then Moon Knight is titled Moon Knight: The First Season. Okay.
Oh.
Andor is also titled The First Season, which we know has more than one season. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier is titled The First Season. So, you know, not saying it means anything. Probably doesn't.
That's interesting.
Something to speculate about, I guess.
All right. Lastly, director Jeff Rose, TMNT 2, an animated feature, is slated for October 9th, 2026.
Scotty? Yeah, this is good news. I enjoyed that TMNT that we got last summer, produced by Seth Rogen. And the thing about that one, that it kind of distinguished itself in terms of the art style, which was reminiscent of Spider-Verse, but did enough to, distinguish itself. It's, it had actual teenagers, like young teenagers in terms of our Ninja Turtles. So I'm kind of hopeful that we'll see them continue to progress. One of the departures story-wise is the fact that they attend high school, so I'll be curious to see how that plays into their dynamics. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see our turtles kind of go their separate ways and have to come back together to face who I hope will be Shredder, because spoilers, but we had Shredder teased in the first film, but we didn't actually have him in the proceedings. And it's not really Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if they're not going up against Shredder.
All right. Well, that is our show for this evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And let's go around and tell them where they can find you guys online. What else you got going on in the podcast world? Haley Hobbs.
Yeah, we dropped our source pages, Dune review and comparison. Brian and I had a lot of thoughts. I have even more thoughts to continue when we do our Bingers episode with Scotty, Ash, and Bill. And then Multiverse News and Bingers Oscars. And yeah, I'm around. You can find me.
So many things.
I can't wait to go on spring break next week.
Jay Sisson.
Yeah. Speaking of, this podcast, like if you like it, go give us a 5-star review. It really helps the show, and more than just past Apple, you can do it on Spotify, and doing that for our other shows too. If you listen to the other shows that we're on, like Source Pages or like Animation Deliberation or like MCU Cast, like do the same thing for those shows. Like it really helps if you kind of help out our different camps. It helps float. A rising tide kind of lifts all boats in that sense. So visit us on those sites. But yeah, you can find me at Commute the Podcast. It's a weekly educational show. We go through 3 interesting topics for about 20 minutes. So come check us out.
Awesome. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, it's for me when I'm not riding promotional popcorn buckets on the high sand seas of Arrakis. You can find me over at Animation Deliberation. I've also been a frequent contributor to Bingers Assemble.
Yes. And we'll be on Binge Assemble this week talking about good old Oscars predictions episode. We've now seen and talked about all 10 of the Oscar Best Picture nominations, and we're about to do our episode where we kind of talk predictions. Now that we've seen them all, what do we predict? And we'll also be talking about actor, actress, supporting actor, supporting actress, all those things. So it'll be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So check out Bingers Assemble this week, please. And over on the MCU Cast, we let ChatGPT give us topics this week, and it was a silly and pretty fun gimmicky episode to do. We've just it was fun. It was fun and random, and literally random. Like we didn't know what we were going to talk about, and that's always kind of fun. Like at least with the feedback, like we have the chance to read it. With ChatGPT, it was just like talk about this. And we're like, all right, it was fun. So that's the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. We're in kind of a hiatus of Marvel stuff, so we just enjoyed talking random Marvel stuff. And that'll be all for us tonight here on Multiverse News. Please come back and check us out. Next week. Like they said, 5 stars, all the places. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.